Ladies and gentlemen, there's something remarkable about the way we see the world, the way we draw lines, define boundaries, and decide who belongs in our circle. It's natural, it's human, we find comfort in familiarity, safety in knowing who's on our team. But every so often, we're given a moment, a choice, that challenges that definition. A few years ago, a friend shared a story with me. He was in line at a coffee shop when the person in front of him came up short on change, just a few cents. Without hesitation, he reached into his pocket, covered the difference, and the person gave him a grateful smile. A simple moment, but what happened next surprised him. A man behind him in line, someone he had never met, leaned in and said, "That was really kind of you. Are you two friends?" And my friend just smiled and said, "I guess we are now." Think about that for a second. A tiny gesture, barely worth remembering, but it revealed something fundamental about how we see each other. Too often we assume that being a neighbor requires proximity, that it's about living on the same street, sharing a fence, or recognizing a familiar face. But what if being a neighbor isn't about geography? What if it's about mindset? Every day, we pass by hundreds of people. Some we nod to, some we don't notice at all. But the real test of being a neighbor isn't in who we already know. It's in how we respond to those we don't. There's an old story about a man who was beaten, left on the side of the road. Two people walked by, people who by all accounts should have helped. They had the status, the means, the responsibility, but they didn't. They crossed to the other side. And then a third person came along, someone different, someone unexpected. He stopped, he helped. Not because it was convenient, not because it was expected, but because he saw another human in need. The lesson isn't just about kindness, it's about the courage to redefine who belongs in our circle. It's easy to care about those who look like us, think like us, agree with us. But the real test of character is in how we treat the people who don't. The ones we might disagree with, the ones who challenge us, the ones we're tempted to pass by. So maybe the question isn't, who is my neighbor? Maybe the real question is, who am I willing to be a neighbor to? Because at the end of the day, being a neighbor isn't about proximity, it's about responsibility. And the world doesn't change when we wait for someone else to step up. It changes when we decide to cross the street. We naturally define boundaries. We tend to categorize people based on familiarity, but real connection goes beyond proximity. A small act can redefine relationships. Simple gestures of kindness, even between strangers, can shift how we see each other. Being a neighbor isn't about geography, it's about mindset and the willingness to recognize others as part of our community. We often overlook people outside our circle. True neighborliness is tested by how we treat those we don't know or understand. The real challenge is in crossing the divide. It's easy to care for those like us, but the real test is how we treat those who aren't. We all have a choice in how we respond. Do we walk away from those in need, or do we stop and help regardless of circumstances? True leadership is about inclusion. Great leaders and compassionate people expand their circles rather than limiting them. The world changes through small decisions. Large-scale change starts with small, intentional acts of kindness and responsibility. Our actions define who we are. Being a neighbor isn't about waiting for the right moment. It's about choosing to act now. It's up to us to cross the street. The choice to be a neighbor isn't about others. It's about who we decide to be every day. We don't always realize it, but we are constantly drawing invisible lines around us. We define who is in our circle and who isn't, who we trust and who we don't, who we feel responsible for, and who we walk past without a second thought. It's not something we do consciously most of the time. It's just how we're wired. Our brains seek patterns, familiarity, and safety. We feel more comfortable around people who look like us, think like us, speak like us. It's an instinct that has helped humanity survive for generations, but it's also the very thing that holds us back. Think about the moments that define relationships. They don't happen because of proximity alone. Just because someone lives next door or works at the same company doesn't mean there's a real connection. That connection happens when we choose to see beyond labels, beyond assumptions, beyond the boundaries we've created. The most powerful relationships, the ones that truly change lives, happen when we step outside of what's familiar and open ourselves to something or someone unexpected. There's something powerful about breaking those lines we draw, even in the smallest ways. A conversation with a stranger, an act of kindness with no expectation in return, a moment of recognition for someone we might have overlooked. These moments remind us that the world isn't divided into us and them unless we make it that way. The boundaries we create are only real if we refuse to challenge them. And every time we choose to erase one, we expand our sense of belonging, not just for ourselves, but for those around us. A single moment, a simple gesture, can change the course of a relationship. It doesn't take grand displays or dramatic speeches. Sometimes all it takes is one small act of kindness, one decision to show up, one choice to listen when someone needs to be heard. These moments seem insignificant in isolation, but they have the power to reshape how people see each other, to shift the way we connect. Imagine a time when someone unexpectedly did something kind for you. Maybe they covered the bill when you forgot your wallet. Maybe they stayed a little longer when you were having a bad day. Maybe they simply said, "I see you," when you felt invisible. In that moment, something shifted. They weren't just another person in the background of your life anymore. They became someone who mattered. There's always a divide. Sometimes it's created by differences in culture, background, or belief. Sometimes it's built from fear, misunderstanding, or past experiences. It can be as simple as two neighbors who never speak because they assume they have nothing in common, or as deep as entire communities separated by history and distrust. But no matter how wide the gap seems, it only takes one person, one decision, to start bridging it. Crossing that divide isn't about proving someone wrong or changing their mind. It's about showing up with an open heart, with the willingness to listen, to understand, to find common ground where it seems like none exists. It's about recognizing that at our core, we all want the same things: to be seen, to be heard, to belong. And the only way to make that possible is to step forward first, even when it feels uncomfortable, even when it feels uncertain. It's easier to stay in our own corners, to stick with what we know. But the real challenge, the one that truly changes us, is in stepping beyond that. Because on the other side of that divide, beyond the fear, beyond the hesitation, is the possibility of something greater. A new perspective, a new connection, a new way of seeing the world. And that only happens when we take the first step. Every situation we face presents us with a choice. We don't always control what happens to us, but we always control how we respond. In moments of frustration, we can react with anger or with patience. In moments of uncertainty, we can lean into fear or into curiosity. When we encounter someone in need, we can choose to step forward or turn away. These decisions, small as they may seem, shape not only the moment, but the kind of person we become. It's easy to believe that circumstances determine our actions, that we respond based on what's happening around us. But in reality, it's not the situation, it's us. Two people can experience the same challenge, yet respond in completely different ways. One may react with blame, waiting for someone else to fix the problem. The other may take ownership, choosing to be part of the solution. The difference isn't in the circumstance, it's in the mindset. We often underestimate the power of our response. A single kind word can diffuse an argument. A moment of empathy can turn a stranger into a friend. A decision to listen instead of dismiss can open doors we never expected. But just as kindness can build, indifference can destroy. Choosing to ignore, choosing to stay silent, choosing to do nothing is still a choice, and often it's the one that does the most harm. Every day we are faced with moments where we must decide who we want to be. Do we react based on impulse, or do we pause and choose a response that aligns with our values? Do we add to the negativity around us, or do we choose to be a force for good? The choice is always ours, and the sum of those choices defines not only our relationships and our communities, but the world we create together. Leadership is not about power, titles, or authority. It's about people. And true leadership isn't measured by how many people follow, but by how many people feel seen, valued, and included. The best leaders don't build walls around a select few, they open doors for as many as possible. They create spaces where voices are heard, perspectives are respected, and differences are not just tolerated but embraced. Inclusion is not about agreeing with everyone. It's not about erasing differences or making things comfortable. It's about recognizing that strength comes from diversity, that the best ideas, the most creative solutions, and the strongest communities are built when different minds come together. It takes humility to admit that one person doesn't have all the answers. It takes courage to invite people with different backgrounds, experiences, and viewpoints into the conversation. And it takes wisdom to understand that leadership isn't about having all the right ideas, it's about making sure the right ideas are heard. True leaders don't create circles of exclusivity where only a few have a voice. They expand the table, making room for those who have been overlooked, those who have been unheard, those who have something valuable to contribute but have never been given the opportunity. They recognize that leadership is not about standing above others, but standing among them, lifting them up, and ensuring that everyone has a place. Step at a time, when people feel included, they don't just follow, they invest. They bring their best ideas, their energy, and their loyalty because they know they matter. And that is what real leadership looks like. Not control, not dominance, but a commitment to making sure that no one is left behind, that no one is unseen, and that everyone has a role in building something greater than themselves. Change doesn't always come in large, dramatic waves. It doesn't always look like a revolution or a grand gesture. More often than not, it's the small decisions made by individuals, day by day, that add up to something far greater. It's the choice to act with kindness instead of indifference, to listen instead of ignore, to speak up instead of stay silent. These aren't the decisions that make headlines, but they are the ones that shift the course of lives, communities, and even the world. We often think of change as something that needs to be monumental. We wait for the perfect moment, the right conditions, the big event that will push everything forward. But in reality, the smallest choices we make today ripple out to shape tomorrow. When one person decides to help another, when someone chooses to stand up for what's right in the face of opposition, when we choose to challenge injustice, however small, we set a chain of events into motion. Each small act of integrity, kindness, and courage has the power to inspire others, to create a spark that spreads, building momentum until it becomes a force. It's easy to feel like our actions don't matter in the grand scheme of things, but the truth is, the sum of millions of small, seemingly insignificant decisions is what creates change. A single conversation can change someone's outlook. A small gesture of kindness can turn a bad day around. And one person choosing to make a stand can inspire an entire movement. These moments may seem ordinary in the moment, but they accumulate, layer by layer, until they transform not just one life, but many. We don't have to wait for the world to change. We can start right now, in our own lives, by making the decisions that reflect the change we wish to see. We can choose to act with empathy, to be intentional with our words, to help when we can, to listen more than we speak. These small decisions build the foundation of something far bigger than ourselves, something that grows and evolves with each choice we make. The world doesn't change all at once, but it changes with every decision to do better, to be better, to lift others. Every moment we live is a choice, and every choice we make reflects something deeper about who we are. We may not always realize it, but our actions speak louder than our words or intentions. They are the outward expressions of our values, our beliefs, and our character. It's not what we say that defines us, it's what we do. The choices we make in the face of adversity, the kindness we extend to strangers, the way we handle success and failure, these actions are what people remember. They are what reveal who we truly are, even when we're not trying to show it. We often think that we have time to become the person we aspire to be, that our actions are only important when we reach some future version of ourselves. But the truth is, we are already becoming that person with every decision we make. When we choose honesty, even when it's difficult, we're showing integrity. When we choose to forgive, even when we've been wronged, we're showing grace. When we choose to help, even when it's inconvenient, we're showing empathy. These actions, however small, shape us more than we realize. Our actions are the reflection of the values we claim to hold. If we say we value kindness, but our actions show indifference, then we are not living in alignment with that value. If we claim to be compassionate, but we ignore the needs of others, our actions are the truest measure of who we are. It's easy to say we stand for something, but it's what we do that reveals our true commitments.